I'm Stephanie Paul, and I am the Executive Director of the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions. I want to thank everybody for being here and for having us here to speak to you all a little bit more about NAPC and the background and kind of what we do, what our current programs are and some of the exciting things we have kind of coming up on the horizon. I know there's some new CLG, state CLG coordinators out there, so welcome, and I'm looking forward to meeting you all. Also, I know there are some of you who have worked with NAPC, whether it's through camp or maybe attending forum, so it's a little bit about us, but we hope to give you some more information to know some of our other programs. With me here today, I have some board members and staff, so I'm going to introduce them first, and they'll be coming in and talking a little bit as well with us today. The first person I'd like to introduce is Corey Kegarais. He's our current NAPC board chair. He previously served as the NAPC board treasurer. He also served on the local host and planning committee for Forum 2014 in Philadelphia. Outside of NAPC, Corey is Eastern Regional Coordinator with the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission and State Historic Preservation Office. Corey, if you want to wave. And then we also have Paula Moore. She is the current NAPC Vice Chair. She also serves as the Chair of the Board Development Committee. Prior to joining the board, Paula was the lead host local planning partner for Forum 2018 in Des Moines and a big part of our success there. Outside of her work with NAPC, Paula is the architectural historian and certified local government coordinator with the Iowa State Historic Preservation Office. Welcome, Paula. We also have Todd Scott. He is the editor of NAPC's quarterly Journal of the Alliance Review. He serves as the chair of the Alliance Review Committee, and he also just recently served as the chair of Forum 2020, which many of you may have seen him there if you attended, and we'll talk a little more about that later. And Todd is currently preservation planner and architect with King County in Washington State. And finally, last but not least, we have Marie Snyder, who many of you I'm sure are familiar with. She is the NAPC program assistant, and she serves as a key contact for the office and for our programs and camp planning. So thanks to all of them for being here with us, and thank you and welcome. And now to give a little more talk about NAPC. Just to start off with our mission, I think it's always important to touch base on that. NAPC helps communities build strong local preservation programs and leaders through education, training, and advocacy. NAPC, a little bit of history lesson on us. We were established in 1983 to serve as the voice for commissions and local preservation programs nationwide. At the time, there was a kind of a void and felt that was missing for the grassroots local effort. We were also established to fill the need for training communities in the newly developed Certified Local Government Program, which was established in the early 80s. So NAPC does have a long history with the CLG program and providing support and training for CLGs and partnerships with the National Park Service. So we have a long, like I say, a long history and have been doing certified local government partnerships and training for quite some time. Our staffing in NAPC, we have just two of us right now, myself and then Marie Snyder. We have a full menu of support and programming that we offer. And so with just two staff members, we are very lucky to have the support of a strong board. NAPC has an active and engaged board, not besides just governance, that are a working board. So they do work with us on various programming areas and such like that. And so to talk a little bit more about our board, I am happy to introduce or to have Paula Moore say a few words.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the work of the Board Development Committee. I'll just say up front that the reason why I particularly wanted to talk to this group is that we are looking for new board members for NAPC. Stephanie mentioned that the board plays two roles. We're a governance board, but we are also a hardworking board and provide assistance to our wonderful staff in the various programs that we undertake. We currently have, I think it's 18 people on our board. It's a very collegial board, friendly, dare I say fun-loving. But as I mentioned, we're also very hardworking, and we're fully committed to making a difference in historic preservation. In terms of our board, as many boards, we're always looking to strike a balance so that our board reflects all aspects of the historic preservation field. So we look at expertise that people bring to the board, affiliation with some of our other preservation partners, like the National Trust or Nick Shippo. Geography is something, so we make sure that every region of the country is represented with several board members. Ethnic and cultural representation is something that we're paying particular attention to. And then professional identity. What is your day job? So we have several certified local government coordinators like myself on the board currently. We have people who work at the city level in preservation, several members from our private nonprofit organizations around the country. In terms of particular board representation that we're seeking right now, that would include the ethnic and cultural diversity that I mentioned a few minutes ago. We are also looking for people who represent preservation in rural parts of the country. As you can imagine, we have quite a few board members who live in urban areas and know that landscape very well, but we're interested in getting representation from small and rural areas. And then another need is people who serve on a commission as a private citizen. That's a real need on our board too. So if you have nominations or suggestions for someone who might meet one or more of those categories, we would very much love to hear from you. And a good way to get in touch with us is just through the NAPC website. Stephanie's email is there, or you can find me at the Iowa State Historic Preservation Office. And I think just in closing, you know, I'm like a lot of people, I've been on boards in my career, and I really enjoy the NAPC board. I mean, it's one where I feel like I get a lot more than I give. And I always come away from the meetings and the forum learning something about the state of preservation at the national level, and it really helps inform my work in Iowa. So it's been a very rewarding experience for me. So I guess I just hope that we can hear from one of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula. We love having you on the board as well. So it's, like I say, I can't say enough good things about our board and how much support and it's fun as well. So it's not all work all the time. So, so now, so I've kind of given some background on us a little bit. I do want to touch on the program, you know, programming part of NAPC and kind of how that ties in different areas of our mission. The first, you know, training, you know, I would like to talk a little bit about the Alliance Review. This is our quarterly journal that we produce. The Alliance Review features timely topics that serve as a resource not only for local commission members and staff, but for the larger, you know, preservation community with quality articles and content. The Alliance Review often serves, you know, I hear often that it's a resource library for our preservation practitioners. It's something people keep and go back to over and over because of the quality of the articles. But I do want to recognize our fantastic longtime editor who I enjoy working with, and I'll let him say a few words as well and just, you know, kind of talk a little bit about the Alliance Review. Todd Scott. Hey, Todd Scott.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you so much. And a shout out to my statewide CLG coordinator, Kim Gant, if she's on board today. Hi, and hope you're faring well in the smoke down in Olympia. So the Alliance Review, it's certainly one of our more popular programs that NAPC provides. We've been trying to focus articles in each issue on a single topic or related topics One of the things that we've been doing a little bit more of in the last couple of years is trying to bring attention to local staff and organizations. So we often do a staff profile or a volunteer profile from a local program. And then we highlight preservation organizations, a variety of different preservation organizations around the country every quarter. We're beginning to experiment with some new features too. Paula has done yeoman's work sort of doing some online tools for preservationists, just a single page or two that gives you an idea of some of the tools that are out there for people to use from a variety of sources, whether it's modernist architecture or whether it's limestone. There are a variety of different things. And so we're beginning to try to feature one of those in every issue. And then we, particularly with a lot of things that are going on in the world these days, we have started a new topic called What If We Thought Differently About? And about windows, about defensible versus defendable, you know, just a brief sort of essay about what if we thought differently about how we do some of the things that we do. So we hope that that sparks some conversation amongst our readers and NAPC members. The Alliance Review really is a volunteer effort. I mean, you know, there are five people on our committee, and we're the ones that get the articles. We're the ones that pull everything together. We do have a graphic designer who does the work, and then staff ultimately does the final pass before the thing gets printed or finished and finalized and sent to you digitally. And then it really is just our committee members sort of reaching out to as many people as we possibly can to find out what the critical topics are for us at the moment. We're always looking for authors, particularly authors who are willing to do research or maybe have already done research. So we're relying on people like yourselves to let us know what's out there. You all know, you know, a lot, you all have a lot more contacts than we do. So we're more than happy to hear some possibilities from you as state coordinators, whether you have a local program that has a particularly interesting approach to something, or maybe you are aware of some graduate students who've done some interesting research, or there's a particular problem that a local program has tried to resolve. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. So don't hesitate to let us know, you know, that those things are out there. We, unfortunately, with 5 volunteers, we don't have the opportunity to actually do a whole lot of the research ourselves because we all have full-time jobs. But we are, you know, so we're hopefully looking for people who've done a lot of the work already and can provide us with some good information and some good articles. We have upcoming issues for the next year. We're actually should be coming out shortly. One that's related to some zoning and legal issues. We'll be doing a forum postscript issue, so we'll focus on a couple of the sessions that we had during virtual forum in Tacoma this last month. It's just been a month. and then highlight, you know, some things like our award winners and things of that sort. So we are looking forward to doing an issue on hot topics from our listserv. So our committee will sort of scrounge around and see what seemed to be the hottest topics over the last year on our listserv, and we'll be looking for authors for those particular topics. And then we'll be doing an issue on disaster preparedness. Clearly that's an issue right now, particularly in the West Coast. And so we're hoping to be able to come up with some good articles and some good advice on how local commissions can deal with preparing for disasters, whether it's sea level rise, whether it's you know, increased storm intensities like we saw down in Lake Charles in the last month or so with the hurricane, or whether it's with forest fires like we're seeing out here in the West. So we'll be looking for some good response to that, and hopefully we can find some people who can write about that in particular. Thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit about the Alliance Review. Don't hesitate to let me know. You can contact me through Stephanie, or you can go to our county's website, kingcounty.gov/landmarks, and reach out to me at any time. So happy to hear from any of you or all of you. Enjoy the rest of the session, and thanks again.
Thank you, Todd. And like I say, Todd really does a fantastic job and a huge amount of work, and you can see in the quality of the journal. So we're very, yes, we are, it's a fun thing to work with, but he does a fantastic job. And shifting gears to another piece of our programming under the training heading prong of our mission is Forum. And Forum is our biennial national conference. As Todd said, we just wrapped up our fully virtual conference in August. I think many of you attended. We had a participation of nearly 1,000 people from all 50 states, and really enjoyed it, like I say, and we appreciate everybody's quick pivot with us and working with us. But we had a good time really pulling it together and trying to keep in the spirit of Forum of what it is. The focus, traditionally of Forum is to provide a much needed information and training to our commission members, staff, local and state, federal employees. We focus, on procedural topics, the nuts and bolts training for commission and preservation folks on the ground. Because, as we all know, commission members, there's a new crop up all the time that really need the training. There's those that have been there for quite a while that could also use a refresh. So we really try to focus on, giving the basics, but we also try and address timely, topics that are facing commissions at this time. And we've talked a little bit about whether, kind of climate change and adaptation, sea level rise, diversity and equity, also challenges in advocating for preservation. So we do try to do a mix and mindful of the people that, this is all new information to, but also try to bring something to people, that's something new and different every time that we do this. We look forward to being able to meet in person again because a large component of Forum is the chance for people to meet face to face and those informal interactions and really the exchange of ideas. And also we do really like to focus on our the location of our partner. It's not just a conference center. We really do try to explore the city and the state and focus on that and give people kind of an opening into places. We've been in some really interesting places, and maybe places that you may not have traveled, but people have walked away and say this was one of their favorite places they've been, or wow, I've never would have thought, or something like that. And so they've really enjoyed these different places. And so kudos to our previous partners. We have, if you look on the board over there, some seasoned planning partners, past Forum planning partners from our board there. So something we really do enjoy, and we're looking forward to. Oh, and I almost would, and we're going to Cincinnati, which we're very excited in 2022. So we're looking forward to that. So yeah, so like I said, that's something to look forward to, and we're already gearing up for 2 years ahead. Another component of our training is camp, which I know that we've worked with many of you on that, and that is our signature training program within kind of the day-to-day through NAPC. It's the Commission Assistance Mentoring Program. The strength of our camp program, I really feel, comes from the participation of our expert and knowledgeable trainers. We have a broad group of nearly 35 trainers. These, they apply, they go through an interview and acceptance process, and we really take our time to work with them, through the acceptance process, and then they provide a series of content and training modules that we really have developed and refined over the years. And so, it's like I said, it's a wide variety of people. Some work for state historic preservation offices, some are commission members, some are consultants, architects, city planners. So we have a wide breadth of, similar to our board, different varying levels of expertise, geography that we really try to bring to the plate and kind of have this nice mix of people for our trainings. The way that our camp works, we work in planning with our camp hosts who come to us for these trainings over a series of months. It's not just something we send out that's already, kind of prepackaged and ready to go. We, over a series of months, we customize the training to suit the needs of the community or state. Our trainers, get to know their local design guidelines, ordinance, take a look at their meeting, agendas and minutes and all of that, and really get to know. We, had a series of meetings, so we really try to bring that customizable offering to them. And again, we do have, a lot of the kind of the basic topics for local commissions, as we talked about with forum as well. We provide instruction on preservation law as a primer for most all of our full day camps that we do, along with an overview of the Secretary of the Interior standards and how this applies to work with local commissions and with their guidelines in their communities. So those we like to focus on. And then really we look at the needs of the community and kind of other areas of instruction. We include ethics in the role of the commissioner because, many commissions may need a refresh on some things they should and shouldn't be doing. Or meeting procedures. We hear from commission staff who, pulling their hair out because their commissions have 6 or 5 6-hour meetings or don't understand the expectations of kind of communication. And so it's really kind of, it's like a breath of fresh air for some of the people who deal, kind of with this on a day-to-day basis, that we have these people who can come in, not only give the instruction, but kind of, be a voice and reminder for things that maybe the commission's not listening to them when they're saying, or as a reinforcement. So it's, it's kind of like I say, it's a partnership in this planning. Later in our discussion, I will be talking a little more, like I say, we have a standard camp menu and besides, I think I failed to mention, like we have the standards and legal and meeting procedures and, preservation planning, survey, community engagement, those types. But we are also developing a newly expanded menu of camp topics. And like I say, I'll kind of go into more detail and we'll even have a presentation on that tomorrow. But this will include community disaster and resiliency planning modules, kind of going over how, this works and, kind of developing these modules for the people that are dealing with planning for disasters and dealing with the recovery. For now, I do want to touch though on how we have adapted camp during quarantine, similar to forum. We kind of were on hold for a little bit because, similar to forum, camp, the beauty of it is that the in-person piece is really vital, in some aspects. You can't really replace that, in-person kind of back and forth. But, the wait times are, we have kind of looked at how to, adjust that. Our traditional camps, our trainers, we typically have 3 that fly in or travel into the host site for a full day. We present 6 sessions, and so that's how that works. They, like I say, they immerse themselves in the local commission and audience. But we did work kind of to see how to, kind of to rethink it and how we could be doing this and keep the interactive piece. And so we have developed a series of modules now to do camp virtually. And so we've worked with the hosts and we do that through Zoom. Marie in our office, Marie Snyder, she really has taken the lead on this and has developed the kind of a great framework of, kind of bringing this in Zoom. And so, and the trainers have really taken a hold of it. And so we have this interactive piece. We typically split it over 2 days if we're doing the full day camp, because 6 hours in front, or 7 hours on, sometimes to bring it in might be a little bit for the camp. So we split it up. One other thing that we are exploring right now is being able to provide a follow-up to camp, where we have the trainers often, we're in camp, we do a debrief, but really to have the trainers there, they are working where they kind of, what they take from the sessions, they'll put together a report and then have, maybe a 2-hour debrief afterwards with the camp host and kind of some recommendations. And so I think that's important, and that all kind of fits into the similar price package of the full day camp. So it's like I say, so we're excited. I think we're still kind of on hold for travel for a bit, but so we're looking at that and really kicking off. And our fall is almost full of these virtual camps. So if you have any questions, that's something Marie and I can also talk about as well. I'm trying to see over here. Are there any questions or? And later, if there's any, kind of topics, down the road that, maybe that we don't offer that you're familiar with, or things you have questions about, please, let us know as well. I'd be happy talk about that. One other thing that we've been working on now, kind of with opening up this virtual, training and opportunities and everybody becoming much more comfortable with it. In this new virtual environment, we're looking at developing some monthly online opportunities through webinars or discussion forums, meetings, those types, kind of more shortened, kind of quick overviews of what, different topics. These will be open, to the public, but we're also looking to offer some of these opportunities, as part of our membership benefits, or offer up to members. NAPC is a membership organization. We do rely on membership, subscriptions from cities, and we have state offices, commissions, individuals, and students. But this support really does allow us to keep our programming going. We try to keep it affordable. We have a large membership, which is for communities, commissions with communities greater than 50,000 people, and it's right at $150. And our medium membership is 50 to 50,000 at 100. Small is $50 for under 5,000. And then we can even have, there's individual memberships for $35 per year. And so, we do try to keep that in mind because, many commissions, are, small or from small communities. But yeah, so we appreciate our members and are always looking for feedback. Last but not least, NAPC has an active listserv. I'm sure many of you are on this listserv. It's the NAPCL, and this is our go-to, like a Google Groups resource, kind of for getting questions answered from colleagues across the country. When people, you can log on there with issues, and if you're having a trouble, maybe I can't answer or somebody in our office, or, but you put it out there, you're having trouble with something in your commission, or and then the members really kind of jump in and with tips and tools, war stories and solutions to these problems. So, it's something I encourage you to check out as well through our membership to the NAPCL. So another resource that we try to provide, in different platforms. And so we have, our trainings and our education, and there's different ways that we try to get the information out to you there. So, are there any? Let me see if there's questions here. Oops, sorry, bear with me here.
I can ask them too if you want, Stephanie.
Yeah, it took me a minute to get there. Will the rates of virtual camps be similar to the in-person rates? We have adjusted them because a large part of our rates for camps were travel. So we did reduce the full day. Previously, for example, our full day camp is $7,000. So that includes an honorarium for our trainers, the travel, the staff and program content. We did reduce that to a $4,000 rate, taking out the travel expenses. We know some people may have grants already in place, and so we were looking at other ways and other services to provide. And so that would be kind of that add-on, kind of a final report and working with the trainers, for that kind of follow-up and recommendations. And so then in that 2-hour kind of meeting at a later date. And so that would be for the full $7,000. So we have adjusted it, yes, somewhat to take that out of there. Let's see, CLG grants can pay for that. Yes, they can. And let's see, are the past issues of the Alliance Review available online? This traditionally is a member benefit. During COVID and all that's gone on, we have opened up and put some of our past issues online and try to open up some additional resources. So there are some available on our website. And so we do have, a listing also of an index that goes all the way back to 1983, 89,
I think.
Yeah. And so, we do have PDFs of old, and like they say, they're time tested and true of some of the things that you look. I go back and look through some of the, it's the same issues that people are still dealing with, and their quality, written. So if you want to ever go back onto our website and take a look.
One of the things that I'm hoping to get done in the next year is, I've started it already, as sort of a searchable catalog of all of our articles, or at least grouped by specific topics, so that, you can sort of say, oh, okay, we did an article on, storm windows in 1987 and in 1993 and all of that. So you can find all of those. That's a goal. We're not quite there yet, but hopefully in the not too distant future, there will be a little bit of a searchable database for our articles.
And one additional layer to Todd's wish list, my wish list is, and we're in the process of, we're going to be looking to, we're in the process of kicking off a website update as well. And so we're looking forward to that. And so our website's very useful, but I'm looking forward to a much more robust, and so that is something on there to really be able to so people can go in and do that kind of searchable index as well. Let's see. Oh, Kelly Bacon says, I would like to show my support for NAPC's listserv. It is a great place to get answers and suggestions to your questions. So thank you. We do try to keep that open, and there's lots out there. We've been around, we've had this for a while, and so it really is kind of a tool to go when you need the answer to something that you just can't find somebody to give you a better answer on. So, but yeah, so let me see here. The next, I would say I'd like to, oh, here we go. We'll talk a little bit about NAPC started our a strategic planning process in March of 2019. So this process was to look in collaboration with a consultant. We worked, with internal and external partners and looked at kind of our current programs. We had an outdated strategic plan, and it was time, like many people find, it's time to revisit and rehaul and start the process again with some fresh eyes. And so we did. And so we, looked at this, kind of our programs of what we have and to look ahead. And Corey, who I introduced earlier, he spearheaded this effort. So I'm going to let him talk a little more about this project and where we are with that.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks,
So I'm going to use my bully pulpit very quickly to keep the love train going and say thank you to all the board members. I want to acknowledge two of our brethren who are on the call, Michael Koop, the CLG coordinator in Minnesota, also on our board, and Nathan Bevel, the CLG coordinator in Ohio, who maybe doesn't know what he has coming to him with Forum in Cincinnati 22. And there might be a couple of alumni from NAPC board on here with us. I joined the NAPC board in 2013, right as we were planning the forum in Philadelphia, which was a massive undertaking for a lot of reasons. And I took that, I agreed to organize that conference on a dare from my old boss in Maryland, and look where it got me. And I've got one more year left, and some change left on my term on the board. The rest of it as chair. So I do want to reiterate Paula's plea that we are actively and constantly seeking engaged, thoughtful, and diverse people to be part of the decision makers from all levels of expertise and experience, because we have a 2-year rotation cycle. So we're in a constant state of renewal and refreshing. And I think that's a really healthy and exciting thing for the organization. I'm probably the old timer on the board, ironically as well, meaning that I have the longest length of service and sort of a window back into some prior points in NAPC's history, which is why the strategic plan was such an important milestone for us to take on at this point in time. Many of you know that for a long time NAPC was managed through a relationship with the University of Georgia. That ended in 2014, and we went through a transition cycle with some support services from a former board member and her consultants, and that's how we got Stephanie to join us. And from there, there was a bit of a kind of a getting our sea legs under us moment. And we finally emerged out of some important governance changes and financial stability in 2018 and said, well, what's next? so the strategic plan was really about saying, now that we have opportunity, how can we make the most of it? So for about a year, a little over a year, we worked with Lisa Craig and our board and through many of you were polled and contributed through surveys or interviews to be part of that conversation and inform that plan. And we voted on it on March 9th, which many of you will know is the day before the governor of New York sent the National Guard to quarantine a whole town in upstate New York. So things changed pretty dramatically the minute, almost immediately after we voted. So we had to shift gears sort of out of necessity to figure out how to get sort of into survival mode over the summer to try and get forum reconstituted and keep camp trainings going and continue to provide all the services in this sort of different context. So we kind of put the plan down for a minute and said, we'll come back to this when we now have a better sense of the landscape, which is kind of what's happening now at this moment. So I've tasked all of the committees to pick up the goals that are, each of our standing committees has a goal in the plan, and to say, take a look at this now with this sort of fresh perspective and figure out what needs to be reprioritized and might be modified. So we'll sort of take a look at that over the next couple of months and really, I think, charge boldly forward in 2021. It's a 5-year, it envisions a 5-year plan. You know, it's not a dramatic shift, but it does in anything that NAPC does. We reaffirmed our commitment to being an each one, teach one organization that really values the contributions and the different perspectives and experiences that all of our constituents and partners bring. But also takes a moment to say, we need to define a little bit more about what our organization, you know, values and what values and principles we want to encourage local communities to embrace in preservation. So how do we both harness and celebrate different, you know, practices and policies, while also demonstrating leadership and presenting a united front to our external partners. So so that piece of this is going to be something that we are going to take on much more concertedly over the next few months. We're calling it sort of our core values and principles. And, you know, the simplest way is to say, you know, what is our statement of belief? What's our statement of faith? What do we believe local preservation does? Why is it important? And what are the perspectives and practices and causes we want to advocate for? It also, there's a, you know, as I mentioned, there's a goal about each of our kind of the core aspects of our mission: education. Stephanie highlighted the Alliance Review, the Listserv, and CAMP as our sort of bedrock education and training programs. But this is, you know, an opportunity for us to start thinking about what are the additional program offerings, what's sort of the menu of choices and vehicles that NAPC can deliver into the future now that, you know, we have technology available to us, or what are the different price points or types of delivery systems that you as state coordinators might think are necessary, or most importantly, our local government partners. So that's kind of a next step, and would be something that would be either in tandem or an outgrowth of that web presence overhaul that Stephanie is long agitating for. I've been on the board almost 9 years, and Stephanie's been with us for a lot of those, and she's been talking about it ever since she got here. So she'll finally get her wish sometime in the near future. the other thing that I want to just highlight coming out of this plan is the part of NAPC's mission that's been present from the beginning, but I think has really been the most underdeveloped and sort of least understood is the advocacy component. And so we tried to ask ourselves during this planning process, what does advocacy mean for NAPC? And we settled on it means a couple of different things depending on the audience and the capacity. One is we are a national partner, sort of one of the big four of the national preservation organizations, and NAPC takes seriously the charge to represent the particular needs and issues and perspectives of the local government partners to that national audience. So we have standing observer status on the advisory council. So I represent NAPC at the quarterly council meetings at the table, fully recognized. I'm privy to all of the council communications and deliberations, and we have the opportunity to weigh in on issues of importance to local members, local governments, and we do so. We did send the council some comments on some of the affordable housing policies that were coming out recently, and as well as some of the procedural rule changes that the council was considering within the last year. So it is really, that seat has really served to elevate both the organization's presence, but also sparked a legitimate interest in what do local folks think. The chairman, John, and John Fowler, the executive director, have approached me regularly, and Stephanie and multiple people said, we want to know what your people care about. So that's a huge opportunity. We've also weighed in on the proposed National Register rule change, sending a position letter and comments to the Park Service on the effects that those rule changes would have on local governments. And that I mentioned the affordable housing. And so we're going to continue that presence, but I think more explicitly than trying to think about how does NAPC think about, we know that local governments are affected by state level issues, perhaps even more so than federal level. So how can a national organization be supportive and involved in state level issues? A quick example is we just did sign on to an amicus brief filed on behalf of the city of Houston regarding a legal challenge to their validity of their ordinance in the Texas Supreme Court. We joined the National Trust and a variety of other statewide and local organizations to be a signer on that amicus brief. And so we want to think about, the affordable housing conversations and the YIMBY movement in California as examples of how NAPC can support preservation, but maybe change, as Todd mentioned, maybe thinking about some things differently and advocating for that. And then finally, the last piece of that is this is not, there's no capacity for NAPC to be involved in every community's advocacy issue. But what I think NAPC's mission in that regard, service in that regard, is to help use our training programs to provide information, training, and skill development for local players to become more effective advocates for their own issues. So we may not take an issue on what happens in every city and every town simply because it's not appropriate and it's not possible, but how can we use CAMP or Forum or the Alliance Review or any of our other programs to tell people how to be effective advocates to their elected officials and communities, and that's again kind of an underdeveloped part of our mission that it's goal number one in the plan, and that's intentional to be a leader. And that is, I think our advocacy committee might actually be meeting momentarily. It's currently chaired by Betsy Bradley, who's on the Spokane, Washington commission and teaches at Goucher. So so that is that's the state of NAPC from the chair's seat, and I hope that when I get to see all of you again in Cincinnati, I can sit in the back row and heckle whoever is on the stage the next time, and with a nice big cocktail. And some of you will join me in the back there, I'm sure. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you, Corey. So there's a lot of great and exciting things that we're working on, both strengthening and looking ahead. So it's an exciting time. Looking forward to, like I said, with the next steps with the plan and other areas of our partnerships. Now, I would like to touch briefly on some of our new initiatives that we're working on and developing in partnership with some folks, in particular the National Park Service. This is through funding and in support of areas that have been affected by him and the FIM disasters. As I'd mentioned earlier briefly, NAPC has developed 8 new camp modules that will address community resilience planning, adaptation, mitigation, and post-disaster recovery tools. As part of the process in developing these modules, because this is the first time we've really undertaken this in quite a long time. We had a camp revamp in 2014, but really many of our topics have remained the same over the years with some add-ons. But NAPC, in partnership with our consultant, Lisa Craig, we gathered a 30-member advisory committee with experts in the field to help refine and craft the content that would be critical and of most use to commissions and communities for all disasters. There's a lot going on out there. And so these modules will be able to be used for the different, I don't want to say universal, but they will be able to use for the different disasters. There really are a framework of how to plan in advance of something, how mitigation, how to engage your community, how to, prepare, how to recover. So these will be, able to take in different communities who are dealing with these topics. And again, this will have, a series of trainers, who are experts in their field with that. Beyond just these trainings, we are also developing, this is our next step now, is a toolkit of resources for these communities. And for all communities, the toolkit will be online, and it will have readings, various links to critical websites, best practices, some plans that are out there, really kind of some things that have already been done. And so you can, if you are, experiencing, or if your community is vulnerable to one of these disasters, you can utilize this toolkit. And so this is a more open kind of, source and will be available for people as well. But so I'm looking forward to that as being a complement to the trainings, which are more intensive kind of in person, but this is kind of a more general that will be, open for people to use and more of a takeaway for those who need these resources. We're also going to be developing, we haven't quite kicked off yet, but developing a model ordinance, model disaster ordinance as well. Likely that will be finalized. Things got switched around a little bit with timing, so that'll be probably early to middle of next year, and that'll be something, the next time we hopefully talk, I can, tell you all about that and how to access and what we're doing with that. I'm kind of checking back in on that. One other area of our partnership, we've worked with some of you so far on this, or you've probably heard over the years, is our CR Surveyor Collector app. I'll start from kind of the beginning. It's a cultural resource tool designed to help communities survey resources digitally. NAPC and the Park Service have worked together in development of this app over the past, I'd say at least 5 years. 6 years and more. And we have not only refined the technology over these years, where we've gotten to this point where we've really made some leaps and bounds in the strides of where we are technologically with this, but also the process for the distribution and the deployment of the app to our partner communities. We've really tried to work through kind of the best practices and the kinks, and really kind of seen where, you know, what works best for communities, how to get it to you effectively, efficiently, so you feel like, you know, everything is covered on, you know, as a partner on their end, and the tool can get out to the community. So we've really tried to refine that, you know, as well. The solution uses the Esri ArcGIS platform, and the field data that is collected using the Esri collector application. So this is a standard and very straightforward to use. I do not have a GIS background, but it's, you know, very, like I say, user-friendly and able to get out in the field and use it. We've also developed some detailed administrative guides, user guides for this for support as well. So, you know, people are able to use that and have the different resources with that. The underlying CR Surveyor geodatabase was created in a joint effort with NAPC and the Park Service as a way for the data to be easily shared between local and state and federal partners. You know, the data is saved in a data structure that matches the National Park Service Cultural Resource Spatial Data Transfer Standards. And so what that means is, so in, you know, the event of beyond even just sharing data, but you know, in emergencies or disasters, the goal is that it can be moved quickly between the various partners. In our CR Surveyor, we have the, you know, kind of our original module, the way that we structure it, that's primarily for architectural resources. We're just finishing up where it is being translated into Spanish. So we're excited about that, so that can reach a greater community. People for those who deploy will have that option. We're also, another long kind of wish that we've always looked towards is the archaeological module. And so that will be something so you can survey, you know, those resources. And that's a very, you know, thoughtful process in itself, because there's so much that goes into that, and with the, you know, privacy and permission and all that. So we've really kind of been working through that with partners who are understanding and sensitive of that. So that is about midway through in our development right now. So we're working on that. We recently, just this past spring, finalized an additional module that goes along with the architectural piece. It's our disaster response module. This module allows for survey of damage to get out there for rapid, you know, kind of recovery survey. There are options for selecting disasters such as flooding, fire, earthquake, unfortunately other, because you never know these days what's coming down the pike out there. So, you know, and this module allows for assessment. It's, you know, fairly straightforward again. And so it's, you know, the level of the damage, destroyed, major, minor, affected, for the different survey features. You can also log primary damage and damage done, you know, by secondary disaster. Unfortunately, sometimes we have two disasters at once, or different kinds of damage. Say you have a flood and a fire on top of that, or, you know, different. So there are ways to look at that in dealing with these multiple types of disasters.
I'm waiting. Hey, Stephanie, I'm waiting. You know, we've got murder hornets out here in Washington State. I'm waiting for the Godzilla termites to start attacking all of our wooden buildings. So, you know, you never know.
So we'll have, you know, so like I say, I think our list is going to be getting longer and longer when it comes to the disasters. And so we're looking, you know, at that. And so, no, I know. So it's, yeah, it's there is the other. And so I think we can, you know, look, but we, you know, it's something to look at, so you can kind of, you know, track each of those where that happens. And so I'm going to take a pause here in about 5 minutes. So we have, I'm going to be introducing one of our partners, Laura Wilson, who is with GIS Inc. She's a consultant who assisted in the development of the app, and is going to be giving a kind of a more in-depth demo of the technology, and kind of go through the steps so you can get a kind of look and feel of the dashboard and all of that. But she'll be coming on at 2 o'clock. So we're just about on time here. So let me see.
Stephanie, we did have a question.
Okay.
And it was from Nelsilla, Maryland.
Okay, thank you. I have to take me a second to read it, sorry.
No, it's fine. I can read it out. We have local guidance and trainings that were developed for Maryland communities around hazardous mitigation planning. I believe they did this as part of their Sandy grant.
Mhm.
Disaster response and recovery and climate adaptation. Is there a way for us to exchange with NAPC to make sure we're consistent or at least aware of ways that we might differ in recommendations?
Absolutely, and that's something we're looking at, as well as when we're like kind of that moves into where, you know, kind of our, not beyond just our toolkit, having the different ways in different areas and different, not reinvent the wheel, and like you say, not conflict with what's out there. But yes, so that's something, and we can put that out. We, you know, we can also incorporate that into training to make sure there's nothing, you know, that there is some consistency out there. But yes, that's something we're looking with for the toolkit, is kind of working with some of the folks that really have already done a lot of this, you know, legwork already.
And if for those of you that haven't seen what Maryland has done, it really is a good resource that I think we can all learn something from. And now I know it was brought up during our sessions that we did with our working group. So it's definitely, we're definitely aware of it and using it as a resource.
Yes, for sure. Other questions? Let's see, any topics that people would want to hear in the Alliance review? Like I say, we have a few more minutes. We can, you know, take a short break, or if anybody has any other questions or any feedback of things they'd like to see, I'd love to hear it. Anybody else on our panel have anything? 2 minutes.
2 minutes and counting. I'll chime in just for a second. This is Meg. Tomorrow you will get a little more information on the disaster training that we're doing with NAPC, as well as the one that we're doing with Main Street. So be prepared for more details, and we'll hear from the organizations working on that tomorrow as well. I can't believe y'all are this quiet. Come on. You can chat if you don't want to do the Q&A.
Yeah, Sean, can we open up the chat if people want to talk to each other? You know, like I say, if you don't want to have any specific questions.
Yeah, sure thing.
You could, Stephanie, this might be a good time to introduce Sean if you want to.
Yes. I don't know if you want to pop on here too.
Sure thing.
Our master, Sean Reardon here. If you want to, I'll give a little bit, I'll say what you were done, and then you can talk a little bit about kind of some of the services you do there. But he was our master kind of tech admin guru, counselor, nerve calmer, all throughout Forum, and then keeping all the event going. And then we you know, brought him on here to help with as well. So Sean, I will let you introduce yourself and your company.
Yeah, my name is Sean Reardon. I own a company called Geek Factory, or for the website, gogeekfactory.com. Basically, we help you know, small businesses, nonprofits kind of grow and scale using the proper technology and business solutions. So that can be anything from CRMs to websites to apps to virtual events like this, and then kind of anything in between.
Okay. Sean, do you see if Laura has arrived yet?
I'm looking. Yep. Laura, you are muted.
Thank you. Hey, hello, everybody.
Laura, I gave a brief introduction a few minutes ago, but as I was kind of waiting, but I just want to say that GIS Inc. is a long-standing partner and has assisted in the development of CR Surveyor and the Collector app. And Laura Wilson has been with us along the way and served as our you know, project manager and facilitator, and has been a great partner. You know, so just now I will turn this over to you if you want to say a little bit more about yourself and GIS Inc.